Hello, welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. I'm your co-host, Daniel Torres-Dwyer, accompanied today by our relatively new co-host, Christine Nicolau. How are you, Christina?
I'm doing great, Daniel. Hi, everyone. Lovely to be here again.
Excellent. Good to see you as well. I'm getting used to not seeing Efrain, which I do see Efrain as well every now and then. But I'm happy to have you on board, Christina. I'll always tell you. When I'm used to having you on board, I probably won't say that anymore. Just get used to it, by the way.
Okay, sounds good.
So today, Christina, we're going to be talking about employer branding. I think this is a topic which is becoming more and more relevant to companies lately, and it's getting more visibility. What do you think of it?
Yeah, it seems like a relatively new topic, like a new big thing for companies and the way they position themselves to be attractive as an employer, and all the conversation around talent, especially now with the Gen Z entering the workforce. There is a lot to uncover there and a lot of conversations happening across FMCG and not only, right?
Yeah, I think it's also part of like the whole thing of companies, corporations becoming more sophisticated when it comes to their personality, of the way they work, if you like. Like, I don't know, company culture, for example, has become very prominent in the conversation maybe in the last 30 years. And I think that this is just another result of that, no?
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like companies are becoming more intentional when it comes to those softer aspects of what makes a company, right? While in the previous years, it was more product focused or business focused. Now they understand the value of their brand as an employer and as a company overall.
Exactly. So actually I'm very excited because I think we're bringing like a big time expert on the topic today. She's Anna Bertoldini, and she's actually heading up employer branding globally for NielsenIQ. I've seen her very active on LinkedIn, so I was very keen to have her on board because she's clearly somebody with an opinion. So here's Anna Bertoldini.
I'm Anna Bertoldini, and I'm the Global Head of Employer Branding at NielsenIQ, and I'm based in Barcelona, Spain.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming here today and joining us. Do you want to share a little bit more, like what's your personal background?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. So I'm Italian-American. I'm originally from Venice, Italy, and now I live in Spain after being on a journey. I lived in a few countries up until now. And essentially, I come from a very, varied background. So I ended up in employer branding kind of by chance. But I studied in my bachelor's international relations and communication. And in my master's, I did marketing and sales. And then I worked in a variety of different positions, ranging from customer service, content management, marketing strategy, and campaign activation. And I worked in some Fortune 500 companies as well as smaller SMBs. So I've been all around. But now I landed at NielsenIQ, and I have quite a streak in employer branding, working in this field for quite some years now.
And you're originally Italian, but you're American, you said?
Yeah, so my dad is from Venice, Italy, and that's where I grew up. But my mom is from Buffalo, New York. So I would travel between both countries growing up. Summers and Christmases in the US, and then I would study most of my, middle school and high school years in Italy, and then I ended up going to college in the US. So It's a mixed bag.
Yeah, well, I can relate with that, right? Because my dad is from Barcelona and my mom is from New Zealand. So I was also brought up between the two places. I didn't go to New Zealand every year, and I studied college here in Barcelona. But here there's a parallelism, and I understand like the wealth in terms of knowledge that brings. And
that's amazing, Dani. I did not know that. I bet you like hiking, right? Being from both places. Nature fan.
No, for sure. I mean, I like it because it gives you like the roots of being growing up somewhere, but also the world vision, of having a parent from the other side of the world. So yeah. And wanted to ask you, so first of all, so we can put ourselves in situation here. So you went into employer branding, and as you've said, I know you've done this now for a few years and for a few companies as well. What does an employer brand actually mean, and why is that important for a business?
Yeah, absolutely. So employer branding is an organization's reputation and perception as a place to work for both candidates externally, but also for employees internally. And I mean, there are many reasons why you should have a positive and attractive employer brand, but essentially the right talent and being able to attract that right talent for your organization is going to help the business grow. And in my opinion, an attractive employer brand, as well as an attractive employer value proposition, is supposed to inspire customer loyalty, deliver shareholder value, and attract the right talent. So, and also like having the best team in place also impacts customer satisfaction. Ultimately, if you're not able to attract quality employees, you can expect a subpar customer experience too.
What I find really, really interesting with your title also, like this is employer branding. So we're talking about brands, and we have like really big companies that have built this amazing consumer brand, or the company brand itself is like very strong. So how is an employer brand different from the company brand?
That's a great question. So I'd put it this way. The employer brand describes, as I mentioned, an employer's reputation of the place to work, and the employee value proposition, as opposed to the more general corporate brand reputation, is kind of the value proposition to customers. So it depends on the target audience. So the employer brand targets candidates and employees, whereas the corporate brand would target more consumers and different types of stakeholders. But they do impact one another because your employees are often your customers too, which is something that people sometimes forget. And what they think and feel can impact your brand perception as a company. Also, vice versa, if your customers don't have a great perception of your company, they for sure won't want to work for you. So the target audience is different, but the two branding strategies kind of do similar things. They help to improve recruitment and retention of talent in the case of an employer brand, and then the consumer brand would aim to fuel customer retention and acquisition.
So you're actually doing marketing from a different perspective.
Yes. So my job at NielsenIQ right now, but my job in general, is to really help bring our EVP to life across our candidate journey and employee life cycle. So my job entails many different things. So it's social media, content development, anything around reputation for candidates and talent, recruitment marketing, branding, etc. And our main aim as an employer branding function is to really position our company as a top employer to key talent segments worldwide.
Yeah, it's interesting because like a good example, and I know that's an industry you haven't worked in per se, Anna, but where you have like a big disassociation between the brand of the product and the employer brand. And I think that in general quite successfully is, for example, tobacco, which is not the most sexy product, and it has like a bad reputation, but in terms of like their employer brand, they've done quite interesting work there. So that's an interesting space to watch, no?
Yes. It's interesting how these two different types of brands can definitely impact each other, and how a customer can perceive a brand, but also how a candidate perceives a brand would definitely impact one another.
Yeah. And I know, Anna, that you're very passionate about employer branding, because obviously not only you're active in terms of like your Nielsen activity per se, which is more through like the Nielsen channels, I imagine, but you're also personally very active and you share a lot of great content out there on LinkedIn, especially. I don't know, actually, do you use other social networks as well for employer branding, or is it mainly LinkedIn?
It's mainly LinkedIn for now. I would love to start. This is for the future. I'd love to be on TikTok as well, making videos, because I know video is kind of the future for content, but mainly LinkedIn for now for this type of content.
What would be kind of like the role of Glassdoor here? Is it more for getting information from outside in, or is it also for pushing content there?
Yes. So Glassdoor is a great tool for employer branding. So to me, it's a source of feedback from employees internally. It's anonymous, so you're able to really gather that honest and authentic feedback that's going to give candidates on the outside a more authentic view and let's say transparent view into your culture, right? So Glassdoor is a part of employer branding. There's a lot of variables that affect the Glassdoor rating. So it's a mix of onboarding, employee experience, and the hiring manager, the team, all of that. It goes into what ultimately ends up on Glassdoor. But I think it's like being able to encourage employees and getting them to write that honest feedback is going to be great for your employer brand as well, because whether it's positive or negative, having a lot of reviews and hopefully mostly positive will impact your company's perception. A lot of candidates do look at Glassdoor. It's an integral part of the candidate journey. So being able to really focus on that and getting the right feedback on it is essential.
Mm-hmm. And how do you approach like employer branding? Like, for example, when you started at NielsenIQ, what are like the steps that you take? I don't know if you have a personal type of strategy that kind of brands yourself as well.
Absolutely. So employer branding at NIQ specifically is a strategic function. So we focus on optimizing and catering to our 4 client experiences. And our clients are candidates, employees, recruiters, and hiring managers. And ultimately, that impacts customers as well. But we aim to define and roll out our messaging on why you should work here. Equip our recruiters and hiring managers with what they need to provide a positive and consistent experience to our candidates, and also empower employees with the knowledge and tools to tell our story to the world if they wish to and are comfortable doing so. And that's my approach too, because what I aim to do is to foster an emotional connection with our talent through our EVP and telling it to the world. So I do this through optimizing our key experiences, but also our different touch points across the candidate journey, and empowering our employees to spread our message too, by providing materials, assets, training, and the support that they need to be able to speak up and feel comfortable doing it.
And I was actually, before this, when I learned that we're going to have this conversation together, I kind of like scrolled through your LinkedIn, and I saw one of the posts that you had made there. It was something with some data from Gartner, and you had pointed out the importance of building a community.
Yes.
In parallel, scrolling through TikTok, there are like tons of videos making fun of how like boomers send an email versus Gen X's versus millennials versus Gen Z.
Yeah.
I'm really wondering, like, from your experience, how can an employer like build those bridges and be able to foster a community that's kind of like cross-generational?
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, because I also see that content and I find it hilarious how different types of employees from different generations are perceived in the workplace. But I think there are many moving parts to this question. So in order to build a culture that's inclusive for all, it's important to take the time and ask and listen to people. So an inclusive workplace culture is built on co-creating it with its employees. Regularly asking for feedback, acting upon it, plus sharing the special moments and experience that make up your culture externally are fundamental to building a culture that people truly believe in and perceive as authentic. I think culture is often hard to define. I like to say this a lot because it's really hard to define culture. I think it's made up of different experiences and unique moments that your employees feel as part of your organization. So that's how I define culture myself. And externally, it's about building those key candidate personas and crafting the right messaging to get them to want to learn more about your organization. And speaking about the different generations, the key steps that you should be taking are to define your values and culture. So that's the first thing you should do, is define what are your values, build that positive workplace that you're looking to build, and really making sure that you know who you are, what you stand for as an organization. Leverage social media to communicate these values and your culture to the world, those unique experiences that I was speaking about, and be authentic and transparent. But also improve the employee experience from onboarding to exit, right? Focusing on all those touch points of the employee life cycle. From the moment they first onboard with your company, what experience are they having there throughout the recruitment process, the onboarding experience, the experience that they're having. Are you training your managers to provide a great report experience? Are your employees equipped with the right learning opportunities to be able to grow within your organization and have a good experience within, right? Are you helping them with their well-being? And also encouraging them to speak up about their experience with their friends and with their networks externally. So really helping them use their own voice to tell the world how great it is to work for you, if of course they wish to. And that doesn't need to be online. It can also be offline too. So there are some steps there.
Essentially, you have a core set of values that's generation agnostic. Mm-hmm. And through that, then you need to create the tailored experiences to each employee so that they feel kind of like their own view of the culture, which is something that they are keen to share also externally afterwards, because they're proud that they're part of it.
Yes. So it's about defining who you are and what you stand for, and then tailoring that message to the candidate personas. So like customer personas, right, that you're speaking to. So being able to enhance certain parts of your culture to really cater to those people. But what I think counts the most in employer branding when you're personalizing it to different generations, but also different people overall, is representation. That's the best way to attract that diversity that you're looking for. So what's key in fostering and attracting diverse talent is the concept of relatability and inclusion. So people want to know if you're going to be a good fit within your organization before they even join. So they want to see examples of real people within your organization that are telling their story, and they want to be able to relate to those people to be able to feel more connected to your story. And building off of that, if your employees feel happy and included and a sense of belonging, they'll become natural advocates without you having to ask them to do so. And the more representation you have externally, because of more people speaking up, the more people on the outside can get that feeling of like me when seeing your messaging, and will be able to see themselves within your organization. And that goes for early careers like students or older generations. It's really everyone. If you see yourself represented within a company, you're going to be more likely to listen and be interested in joining them.
And is it possible, because I always tend to say that an effective company culture is the one that's clear on what it is, and it's not for everybody. So is it possible to have like this strong company culture, effective company culture, but also assure diversity, or how do you do that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. There needs to be a balance between communicating all the great aspects about your company while also laying out its challenges. Because as you mentioned, every company has its perks, but also its pain points. So the aim of the game is not to attract all talent, but the right talent for you. So your company culture is not going to be for everyone, and that's okay. That's how it should be, because you want candidates to be able to self-assess before they apply. So you should give them all the information they need to understand you're going to be a good fit before they apply. Because otherwise you're going to be applying, seeing, an unrealistic image of your company. And then once they join, you're going to see the discrepancy and leave. So you want people to not just join and apply and get hired, but you want them to stay as well. So you need to be able to strike that balance between aspiring messaging and also being realistic and grounded and painting that right picture and realistic picture of what it's like to work for you. So transparency and authenticity, again, are key. If you're not genuine, then people will quickly notice.
Yeah, and ultimately when recruiting people as a headhunter, I know that, well, for one, like we're recruiting very smart people. So if you don't give them the real picture, they're going to realize later very quickly. Normally during the interview process. And secondly, I think that being honest about like the good parts, but also the challenges, I think that it ultimately helps attract people. Maybe ironically, but I think that already knowing what the challenges are gives the people some sense of safety and certainness, no?
Yes. Being authentic is always good. Whether you're maybe driving people away with your authenticity, but those are not going to be the right people for you anyway. As you said, people quickly notice during the interview process if they applied for a company and then, they're not getting the experience that they were promised. They're going to see it.
Yeah. Plus, being honest helps you sleep at night better as well. So,
and we all need good sleep.
It feels like we talk a lot when we talk about employer branding, like about the culture, like the diversity, which is all amazing. But I've been to a couple of events, let's say, where you would have a company promoting themselves, and it would be so much focused on, here's like our ESG initiatives, here's what we do about diversity internally, and here's how amazing our culture is. But do you feel like there are times where also part of the employer branding should be kind of a strong business growth proposition? Like, here, if you come work with us, you're going to have all these amazing business challenges. Here's what you're going to learn. And do you think that like nowadays there's been kind of a shift of a focus, and what's the right balance there?
Yeah. I think since like how things have been going recently, right? A lot of people value stability and security, right, in their jobs. I think that's a trend that we're seeing a lot, is like the ability to provide security given the economic situation and so forth. But to me, a proper employer value proposition, which, by the way, I didn't even say what an employer value proposition is. It's like that North Star that guides how you engage candidates and employees alike, essentially lays out what makes working for your company truly unique. So to me, your EVP should be made up of pillars that address each of a candidate's motivations for why they should join your company, whether it be the brand/company, the work, the why, the culture. That's how our EVP works at NielsenIQ. But every candidate is going to have a different reason for joining an organization or applying to one. So you need to have an answer to all those questions. And if someone is interested in a challenge, like, I want to join your company because what you do is really interesting for me and I want to be a part of it, then you should have like a proposition for that. If they want to join for the culture because they heard you're super inclusive and you're progressive and it's going to be a great chance for them to grow their career. So let's say a career catalyst culture, you want to have a proposition for that too. Or it's the people, and you say, hey, here you're going to be part of a global team and you're going to be working with people from across the world. It's about striking a balance depending on who you're speaking to. So whatever is interesting for a certain type of candidate, and that's very subjective to each candidate and potential candidate persona that you're building, then craft that messaging for whoever you're speaking to. That's what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, I love that. Like from the beginning, that's one of the first things you said. It's about having the different personas and addressing their needs and being able to cater to what they're looking for in your messaging.
Yes, exactly. Those candidate personas are such a great guide in crafting that messaging, because you're going to be able to have something ready whenever you start a campaign or speaking to a specific talent segment. Building those are absolutely critical, coupled with your EVP. So knowing who you are and then being able to personalize that to a specific candidate persona is a super winning strategy.
And I know that one thing that you're very passionate about, and it's a way that you kind of drive your work and your messaging when it comes to employer branding, is storytelling.
Yes.
What does that mean, storytelling for employer branding, and how do you make it? How do you use that to reflect the authenticity of the workplace?
Yeah. So storytelling is something I'm very passionate about, because I think it's the best way to build a connection between the storyteller, so the marketer, and the audience. I think stories can really help bring a message across and ignite those emotions that people are looking to feel when they learn more about who you are. So, and in my opinion, authenticity is achieved once again through relatability, because ultimately sharing snippets of life of your company, the traditions that make it special, the people behind the hard work, and the stories and experiences that make working for you unique is what is going to really highlight and enhance your narrative, right? These are all pieces of your narrative. You want all of your stories and content to always bring back to that main message of who you are and why someone should join your organization. So content showcasing real moments and challenges that make up your working life will help you get lots of engagement, but also build that necessary trust. Because, and I read this statistic from LinkedIn from 2022, and I'm sure this stat has changed since then, but I read that 70% of talent out there is actually passive talent, and 30% is active talent. So passive talent are people who are not looking for jobs. They have a job, they're happy with it, and they're not actively seeking another one. Whereas active talent are people who are actively seeking for work. So most people out there are not looking for jobs, and the minority are. So you want to start building that emotional connection with people through storytelling and your content before they're even interested in applying. Right? You want to entice their interest before they even are searching for a job. So you want them to remember you when they then start looking for their next big opportunity. And to me, the best storytelling and authenticity is achieved through employee advocacy. So encouraging your employees to advocate for your brand, giving them exposure, and guiding them in building their personal brands as a win-win situation can help build that authenticity by adding that extra layer of credibility. So and so share content that's related to your culture and, the transparent, sort of realistic view of your culture, striking that balance we were talking about earlier between aspiration and reality and groundedness, and couple that with that employee advocacy that's going to strengthen that narrative. So it's going to add that credibility that you're looking for. Because in my opinion, nothing that you see on social media is really, truly authentic. I mean, we're all curating content in the end, but the closer you can get to human, the better. So share the traditions, the values, the failures, the successes, the jokes that make working for your company unique.
Is there any piece of content that comes to mind that you've produced as Nielsen or one of your employees has produced that you think is especially representative of this?
Yeah. So we're now running an employee stories campaign since a few months now. And every week we publish a story from a member of our organization, so an employee. And the way that I source this content is I'll go to that employee, I'll ask for a picture, and now we're also switching to video very soon. And I'll ask them to tell me what makes working for that specific team special and what they're working on. So who they are, what they're working on, why it's special to be a part of that specific team, and why they love working at NielsenIQ. And the reason why I structure it this way, and I ask them to mention these specific things, is because I want to give them visibility as a person. So what's your story? How long you've been at the company? What do you do? The projects that they're working on, which helps give clarity to the work that NielsenIQ does. It positions also the employee as an industry expert, right? And then it highlights the aspects of our culture that they love the most. And it's amazing how I see a pattern in every quote and testimonial that I get. What people love the most about NielsenIQ is the culture. It's the team and being a part of this amazing community that we have here. But ultimately, most organizations are black boxes. You just don't know who's on the inside, who's behind the projects, and actually what are the specific projects people are working on. So it really serves to give clarity, and they've been really successful. We're in the top 10% top performing content out of all of our social media categories. So it's proven to be very effective. People are interested in our talent marketing campaigns.
And would that content be shared by NielsenIQ, or do you see that also the employees themselves are keen on sharing and resharing and being proud that, we're part of this campaign?
Yes. Yeah. So it's shared from our company profile because the employee advocacy part is separate. We created a page on SharePoint for people to access our assets, some training and guidelines for sharing on social media. So that's actually separate. This campaign is shared by the company. And the reason why it's been so successful is because we get a lot of traffic to our career site through this campaign. So I see that people actually click on the link that leads to our career site because all of these posts also link there. But the engagement that it gets is incredible. I get a lot of people like and share it. They comment on those posts. They're super encouraging. And what I like to do also is I share the same post internally on our Yammer so that other people can see it and celebrate it internally too. So whoever has missed it can also see it on Yammer. People are really proud and excited. It's also a great opportunity for people to feel celebrated and valued for their work.
Anna, wow. I mean, we've been talking for the past 30 minutes here, and we've gone from defining your value proposition, creating personas, catering to content, and also engaging the employees to have the employee advocacy and all that. So that's a lot of effort that goes behind employer branding. So question, what does good look like? How do you measure success? When do you know that your efforts are being effective?
Yeah, that's a great question. So thank you for validating my work. It makes me feel really good. So I look at a mix of metrics. I report into, this is probably important to mention before, but I report into talent acquisition, which isn't always the case for employer branding. Sometimes actually employer branding is part of marketing. It can land under different departments in the business, but I report to TA. So a lot of my metrics are around recruitment effectiveness. But I do like to look at all metrics across the funnel. So I'll look at things on, for example, top of funnel, I'll look at engagement rate on social media. If we do run a paid campaign, I'll look at leads and click-through rates on all of those posts to see if they're being effective on the employer brand recruitment marketing side. And then I'll look at traffic to our career site, which is super important. Like, are people actually clicking through to our career site? And then how many application starts are we getting on our career site? So traffic to career site, and especially traffic from social media, because those are my main efforts. And then I'll look at applications, so volume of applications and qualified applicants, which I define personally. Everyone defines them a bit differently, but qualified applicants for me are the ones who make it to the screening call. So they've passed the CV review and they've made it to a call. That's a qualified applicant for me, because then the work actually moves on to recruitment and that other experience starts. And then we look at accolades and the use of our Life at NIQ hashtag, which is the new hashtag that we launched when I was hired a little over a year ago. We launched Life at NielsenIQ, and now it's changed to Life at NIQ with our rebrand, but we measure that hashtag too and how much it's being used and mentioned.
So essentially, you said you're looking through the funnel. For you, conversion would be when you have a qualified applicant, right? So the moment someone makes it to, okay, great.
Yeah, I could say click applies hires, but in the hiring part, there's so many variables. I like to say that employer branding is bringing candidates to ring the bell on our door, but then kind of who actually welcomes them and brings them into the party. That's the second aspect of the work. I bring great candidates to the door, and then whatever happens afterwards is a mix of different stakeholder and variables, but I measure my effectiveness based on these metrics.
So we both bring candidates to the door, Anna, in different capacities.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you, like, now that you've built this career on employer branding, and obviously, I mean, you have a good audience out there, and I think you're getting to be well known in the industry now. But if you had to look back at the beginning of your career, which I know, I mean, you've done very well in very little time, but in this time, what type of advice would you give yourself? And now, especially since you're in employer branding, you're putting yourself in the shoes of candidates all the time. If you had to think about yourself, what advice would you give yourself at the beginning of your career?
I love that question. So I'd probably tell a younger version of myself that you don't have to have it all figured out. It's okay to not know. Because I always felt like there was so much pressure for me to know all of the answers to the questions I received, but it's okay to say I don't know. And we're all doing our best, and no one expects perfection. So it's okay to not have it all figured out. You will. It'll take time. It's a work in progress.
Well said.
This was Anna Bertoldini, Global Head of Employer Branding at NielsenIQ. Christina, what are your key takeaways of this conversation?
Well, definitely a lot of things were discussed here, Daniel, and all of them quite interesting. For me, it was quite interesting to see how much work goes behind employer branding. Like, this is building a brand the same way that you would build a product brand, right? There's a lot of work going behind this. And it's really important to understand how a company defines its employer value proposition, but also how it caters the messaging to the different potential employee personas that might be quite different one from another, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it has just like the actual employee value proposition, or EVP, also has a lot to it, no? Like, she defined it as what makes your work unique, but it's very granular in the way that it's the brand, the actual work, the why, the culture. So the concept of the EVP itself is super complex per se.
It is super complex, and then it's really hard, but essential to identify all the right stories that drive back this main message about who you are as an employer and what you have to offer to the employees you're trying to attract.
Yeah, and I think that like social media is a great tool for that, and I think that's probably what's really one of the things that helped employer branding explode. But really, at the end of the day, what people really look at when they choose a company to work for is the people there, no? So really like engaging employees to really like talk well about the company, but that you can't do only by asking them to do it. You actually have to be a great place to work, So it's kind of like a virtuous cycle, if you like, which can also turn into a vicious cycle, probably.
Yeah, probably. It's the whole concept of the employee advocacy that Anna talked about is really important, but only when it has this element of authenticity.
Yeah.
We can bring forward to the greater public.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting because she talked as well about like encouraging employees to build their personal brands, which is something that companies are sometimes opposed to because they don't want like their public image to be compromised. But I think it's turning that into a positive thing, no?
Yeah, and it's also an additional reason for someone to hire a company that also helps them look great and feel great when they work there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that employer branding will continue evolving, so we'll have to watch this space. Christina, thanks for joining me again as a co-host, and thanks to our audience as well for listening in. Remember to follow us on LinkedIn if you're not doing it yet. Also, our sister podcast, the CPG guys in the United States, are offering a lot of interesting content. They were talking, for example, about retail media back in 2020, which most people weren't. So recommend you go there to look at the future of omni commerce. And again, thanks for listening in, and we'll see you next week.